The Jedi Survivor just came out, and I thought that I would mess around, do some gameplay while giving you guys and gals my first impressions and mentioning whether or not this is a game that is worth your time and that you should buy. So right off the top of my head, I would just say yes. Based on my first impressions, this is an amazing game that you'll end up getting your money's worth out of. But if you're still kind of on the fence of whether or not you want to make a full purchase for this game, you can end up getting the EA Pro membership for like 20 bucks a month, and then you get to play this game and more for the entirety of that month, and then you could just unsubscribe right after. I don't think that this game is going to last longer than a month, but in comparison to the first game, this one does a lot of things way better. The combat in general is just a lot tighter. Dual lightsabers is its own separate stance, as well as the lightsaber staff as well. And for the most part, I can just say that the combat and everything about this game just feels a lot tighter. The only issue that I still have with this game is that, unfortunately, it still kind of plays pretend at being like a Souls-like, which is a little bit odd for the genre of game. Like, when I ended up fighting a Rancor, which was an insanely difficult boss, what happened was it basically just two-shot me over and over and over again. And I didn't feel like this was like a Dark Souls moment, like of, oh my God, this is such a difficult boss, I'm gonna have to learn how to fight it. It more so made me feel the same as when I'm playing one of the God of War games, where I realized, oh, this isn't a skill issue, I'm under-leveled. Now, granted, I probably could have beaten that thing if I had a perfect run and studied all of its movements and just never got hit once, sure. But with my experience with games like these, usually it's always best to just leave and come back once you're a higher level. Now, with all of that said, what is this game? Is it open world? No, it's not necessarily open world. It's like a really expansive Metroid game. So this whole area that I've kind of gone to is a gigantic expansive map with all sorts of little doorways that I can't open until I end up getting power-ups later on. And I'm assuming that the further planets are going to end up doing the same thing. Now, on top of all of that, the main thing that's pushing the entirety of this game is the narrative. Because as far as exploration is concerned, for the most part, you'll end up getting upgrades here and there, like, you know, more health packs and whatever else. But the majority of items that you'll end up collecting through your side paths and encounters is going to end up being cosmetic items, which thankfully there is a lot more than just ponchos for Kestis this time. But for the most part, you can rest easy knowing that you're not going to end up missing too much by not exploring everything 110%. Now, I do want to mention just how the leveling system works very briefly. Here's the stances. So as of right now, we've got dual swords and I'm rocking the double blade, but we also have the single lightsaber. The funny thing is that there's actually 2 additional stances that I don't have unlocked yet. One of them we already saw in the trailer is going to be the Kylo Ren lightsaber, and then I don't know what the next one's going to end up being. No spoilers in the comments if you guys know, but you know, I like going into these games blind, but I kind of wanted to give you a first impression. So there's also going to end up being a perk system. This is something that I don't entirely agree with, because a perk system like this, where this first perk, for example, increases my block meter, right? So what that essentially means is that my block meter in a lot of ways felt really weak. And as soon as I saw this perk, I was like, oh, because they're basically handicapping my character and my stats for the sake of going, hey, here's a shiny perk that you can apply to your character instead, which personally is something that I disagree with in terms of gameplay. I would rather that, you know, the functionality of the game is just nice and level and even rather than having to rely on, you know, fake RPG elements. But that said, as you fight enemies, you do end up earning skill points, and there is a quite intensive skill tree. So there's going to end up being survival, lightsaber, and force abilities. So as you end up playing through the game, you can spend your skill points on any of these, but then further skills will end up being unlocked based on your story progression. So you won't have certain force abilities until you progress far enough in the story that they end up unlocking, and then you could end up investing in them. You can end up resetting your skills at any point. The first one's free. From then on, you'll actually spend a skill point, which essentially means that you spend an entire level in order to get additional skill points, which isn't that bad, at least at the early game. You can see survival for the most part is just going to be more health and defense and stuff, but you can also skill, go into the skill tree of your single saber, your staff, your dual saber, the Kylo Ren saber, and then whatever the next one is. And then there's also force abilities, so like force push, force pull, so on and so forth. There definitely seems to be a lot more to this game than the first. They're also kind of implying to me on the story, like Cal, the main character, seems to be a lot more aggressive at certain moments, which makes me really, really hope that we'll end up getting dark force abilities later. Also, we kind of get a little bit of a fast travel system. Any of the, save points or bonfires that we've actually unlocked, we'll be able to fast travel between those. There are going to end up being little side quests that you can obtain, and the 3D map is 10 times better than it was in the original game. Now, lastly, I want to talk about performance because I'm rocking a very, very beefy computer with a very good CPU and a 3090 graphics card. And unfortunately, even me running this at like medium to high settings, I'm still not getting stable 60 frames, which means that this isn't going to end up being the best performance on PC, which has me wondering if this was a console game ported to PC. However, with Jedi Fallen Order, I heard a lot of negativity about the console versions of that game, where they were full of bugs and just generally really, really bad. And then I had no problems playing Fallen Order on PC. So I'm assuming that a lot of this is going to end up being patched out. I don't know if they've got like a day one patch coming or anything like that, but just so you know, going into it on PC, I can't say that this game runs 100% well. It is still very optimized. It's just that there's almost too much graphics going on. And even though we've got this cool desert planet, the first area you're on is Coruscant, and oh my God, it is a visual treat. And I'm really excited to see just how much the game is going to end up stepping up and being like a huge blockbuster title the further we end up getting into the game, right? It's essentially God of War, but with lightsabers. There's also a little bit of Ghost of Tsushima injected into the combat. My only minor complaint about the combat so far is they do make the same mistake that the first game did, where they play pretend at being a Souls-like. So what I mean by that is, in a Souls-like, when you end up doing an attack, you have to come to the entire end of the animation without being able to cancel your animation. And in this type of game, with how fast some of the opponents are and how fast the combat is, I think that that's very unfair, that I have to wait for his entire animation before I can dodge or before I can block, right? It just seems to me like they should have leaned the combat more in the direction of Devil May Cry, where it's fast-paced, rather than being a little bit slower and cumbersome. But at the very least, this game takes a huge step in the direction of the old Jedi Academy and Jedi Outcast games. Personally speaking, those games are extremely dated, but in my opinion are still the best Star Wars Jedi games to date. And I'm just happy that we've got something that comes close to that. Anyways, that's my own first impressions of the game. Whether you should buy the game or not is of course entirely up to you. But if you're not entirely sold on owning the game forever for full price, then just get the EA membership. I'll end up having a review once I end up beating the game, which will probably end up taking me about a week. And if you are interested in seeing more of the game, I already have my first stream, which was 3 hours long, and I am going to be streaming this game as regularly as I possibly can amongst all of the area games I'm playing on the channel. Anyways, smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want, support the channel, and have a wonderful day, everybody.